Just another brother with another humble question. Just another brother with another humble question.
Welcome to another episode of A Brother with Questions. I am your host, B. Period. Man, I appreciate you for joining me. We're going to dive in to tonight's topic. But before we do, let me not forget to ask you to like and subscribe to the channel. Just hit that little like button for me. Hit the notification button too. Don't forget to come back so you can see when these videos have dropped and see what we're talking about today. And don't forget to comment and share as well, man. We appreciate you helping me grow this channel. So tonight, man, we're going to dive in. We are in high school graduation season, and I ran across this particular video by, seems like two recruiters for the military. They were having this conversation, and let's take a peek at what he has to say. My bad. Let me start this video over here.
System is designed for all these kids to pass or make it to the 12th grade. It's easy. It's almost effortless to make it to the 12th grade.
Okay.
Right. Because the standards have been watered down. Would you agree?
I agree.
So just in case you missed that beginning, he says the education system is designed and easy for kids to make it to the 12th grade. That's a comment right there. I'll tell you what I think about it in just a second.
Agree.
Okay.
100%.
So this is the thing. When you're paying for school and you're going to college, you're not getting pushed the same. These professors don't care if you finish. If you turn in your assignments, you're getting a 0, they're going home. So the initial inclination to finish, it's not there. And they're not used to that. They're not self-motivating because.
Now he said something right there. Now, for anybody that's listening to the channel or listened to the channel before or consistently, let's say that, you know that, I've been a teacher. I'm still teaching some as well. And I can't agree more with what he just said. So let me speak on specifically what I'm talking about. So let's look at the first thing he said. He said the education system is designed for kids to make it to the 12th grade. So me personally, I agree with him on that. Because you're really not held accountable for your grades until you make it to high school. And that may sound funny, but the truth is when you're going through middle school, because let's say you get to middle school. When you're going through middle school, the requirement is that you essentially make a D, and as long as you make a D, they're going to push you on for the most part. So it's not till perhaps you have all Ds that it may become a problem. But as long as you're getting at D, you're going to get through middle school. So now there's depending on the state you're in, there might be a couple of state tests you also have to pass. But the grade requirement is really a D. Now, by the time you get to high school, most counties are asking, or most states are probably asking you to get at least a 2.0. But, I'm going to be honest with you. The 2.0, if you're trying, if you're sincerely at least trying, you're turning in your work consistently, and you're making the effort, most students should be able to make a C. Now, that's regardless of whether or not you've learned a lot in a particular course. If you're putting the effort, most times you should probably get at least a C. So from that standpoint, you're getting through high school, relatively with some effort. And then again, depending on your state, there's another state test, some state test requirements that are thrown in there. But the coursework itself is designed for that. And then the second part of the thing that I agree with them on is the students not knowing what self-motivation is. And this right here is the key and the stumper that I have with most high school graduates. And so a lot of them who say they want to go to college, and this is a conversation I have with students all the time, they'll tell you they want to go to college, but then, no, let me back up. They'll tell you they want to go to college, and then they'll tell you the particular interest they have in college. And then you'll look at their grades in those particular related courses in high school, and those sometimes tend to be the worst grades that they have. And then you sit back and then you have to ask yourself, or really I ask them, how is it that you say you want to do, and I'll just use, let's say, a doctor, but yet all your science courses, you either have C's, D's, or F's? Like, make it make sense. And then, or you'll look at their grades and they're a C student, and you're going, you want to be a doctor, but you're a C student? Like, how is it that you think what you're doing right now is preparing you to become a doctor? And then, like he talks about, they'll go, oh, I'll turn it on when I get to college. That's not a thing. It's almost like for every 10 students who go to college, there might be one of those students who turned it on in college and became successful. But for the most part, the successful kids are the kids who are already displaying the characteristics that were going to be needed in order to be successful when they got to college. You don't never display those characteristics in high school and then get to college and turn it on. It's not realistic. Again, there's always an exception to the rule, and I hold, I'm a statistics guy. So yes, there's gonna be one or two that will prove you wrong, but the majority are not. And that's one of the saddest things that I see as a teacher.
Because in 2024, after COVID, a couple years after COVID, right? Like, they don't know how to motivate themselves. They don't have good study habits, and a lot of these kids think they're just gonna turn that shit on once
they get to college.
Yeah. When they get to I'll take school serious when I get to college. You still counting on your hands. You don't know your whole multiplication tables, but you're going to college. Don't start that. Hey, I'm not trying to be funny. Being serious.
Okay.
Right.
And it's the same thing. You're making D's and F's or C's and D's and a 2.0 your way, barely 2.0 your way out of high school, but you're going to college and you're going to be wildly successful. The math ain't mathing. And what's saddening, because I really think it's sad, is that a lot of kids don't know how to take good info when it's given to them. Because you'll go through high school, and you have all these teachers. All these teachers will impart some sort of knowledge into you, or maybe it's not all your teachers. Maybe it's one or two that will impart knowledge into you. And because you are still a teenager, and like a lot of teenagers are, they know everything. You miss these little gems when they're being given to you. Yeah, it just blows my mind.
Like people are graduating people are getting degrees, or high school diplomas, and they can't read.
We have had 2 to 3, 3.7 GPA come in and can't pass the ASVAB.
I had a degree. I had a college degree, fail the ASVAB.
What is that saying?
Yeah.
And that's where he ends that video. But so they're military recruiters. And so he ends the video by talking about the idea that they have successful high school graduates, right? 3.7. He even mentions that he had a college graduate fail the ASVAB. So I went and did some research. I mean, I knew what the ASVAB was. It's the aptitude test that they give to military recruits to garner where they are where their aptitude is, and then they take those scores that you get and they qualify you for different positions within whichever branch of service that you're trying to get into. And so in my research, I discovered that the average student, well, let's go back. So they score this based on the national average for the grade level that you're at when you take the ASVAB. Okay, so that's how they determine the scores. It's a national average based on your grade level. And so the national average, basically, they say on average, the students, people score anywhere from 30 to 70 is the national average. And so if you're in the 50, you're average. If you're above 60, 70, you're above average, and so forth. But it's all based on the national average for the year that you have your grade level. So that's where the scores are. So when he says you failed, according to my research, you can't fail. But what I'm assuming he's saying is that you're scoring below the national average. So that means you're scoring below that 30, which sounds pretty bad when you think about it. So I went and I did some research on what exactly they're testing. And so if you look here, they've abbreviated here, but let me go scroll back up here. So they're giving you general science questions. They're giving you arithmetic reasoning. They're giving you word knowledge, paragraph comprehension, mathematics knowledge. That says electronic information. And then it goes on to say shop information and mechanical comprehension and assembling of objects. So those are sort of the topics. And so the way it works is they give you a general array of amount of questions based on those topics. This is what it looks like it does. And so it looks like you have about 145 questions and 154 minutes to do the test, it would seem. So that's the ASVAB. So I'm looking at that, and then I even wondered, how is it scored? And it looks like at least the computer version of it is an adaptive test. And so for those that don't know what that means, an adaptive test takes the answers that you give, and then based on your answer, you either get a harder question or an easier question. So if you start here in the beginning, they start you at a particular level of questioning. If you get that question right, then they'll give you a harder question to see if you can answer harder questions. If you get that question wrong, then they'll give you a lower level questions to see if you can answer lower level questions. And then it'll go back and forth, increasing the level of questioning or decreasing the level of questioning based on your answers. The more you get wrong, the lower the questions go. The more you get right, the harder the questions get. So that's how it's scored. And a lot of tests are being scored in that adaptive format. They're transitioning a lot of state tests to that way as well. So that's the ASVAB. So going back to his initial question, he talked about how high school graduates were graduating and can't read. So I also went and did some research on that. I'm doing a lot of research. I'm trying to back up what he's saying to see if it's actually true. And so what I found there is it says that these are 2023 statistics. It said 14% of adults in the U.S. can't read. 21% of adults in the U.S. read below 5th grade level. 19% of high school graduates can't read. 85% of juveniles in the court system are functionally illiterate. 70% of inmates can't read above a 4th grade level. 45 million adults are functionally illiterate. 50% of adults in the U.S. can't read a book written at the 8th grade level. 75% of Americans receive food stamps performed at the lowest 2 levels of literacy. 43% of adults with the lowest literacy skill levels live in poverty. 3 out of 4 food stamps recipients perform at the lowest 2 levels of literacy. So when we're putting this sort of piece of puzzle together, and I'm gonna back up out of here. There's a couple things I notice here. So he starts out the conversation talking about high school graduates not being able to read. So according to statistics, 19% of high school graduates on average can't read. So you're graduating high school, and almost 20% of you can't read. That's a lot of people when you consider the number of high school graduates. Because we'll see what are we graduating. Let me look up that statistic real quick for you. How many high school graduates we have? But that's a lot, 20%. So we go there, and then we got 20% that can't read. Then it tells us that 50% of adults can't read a book written at the 8th grade level. That's where this goes. And so as we roll into an election season, and we are bombarding people with information after information after information, we're having conversations about all sorts of things, the economy, right now the whole conversation is about Donald Trump and his guilty verdicts, right? We're talking about police brutality. We're talking about poverty. And when you look at the literacy numbers, why are we talking about reading? Because clearly, based on the literacy numbers, there's a correlation to poverty and your ability to read. So it would almost seem, if we want to solve poverty problems, perhaps we should start with literacy. Because literacy is the key to all of it. And, according to the statistics, what does it say? 75% of Americans who receive food stamps perform at the lowest levels of literacy. The other statistic says 3 out of 4 food stamp recipients perform at lower levels of literacy. So is it because are we poor because we can't read? And if we begin to learn how to read, perhaps our education will increase. And because we have more education, perhaps we'll earn more money. And perhaps we wouldn't be at the lowest levels of poverty anymore. When it comes to these questions, they always seem so simple, but it seems like we always go for the sexy answer, if you will, as opposed to the easy answers. And what I mean is, if the key concept of what sort of that consistently talks about the level of poverty you have relates to your ability to read, then it seems to me it makes more sense to dive at the problem than to dump more money into giving you something because you can't. And you may go, well, you're kind of going backwards at this, because if all these people are already on poverty, how are you going to teach them how to read? And I agree with you. You can't necessarily go back. But what you can do is at that high school level, at the elementary level, is we can pour more resources into ensuring all kids can read. That way, as they get to middle school and high school, they don't fall behind and now become part of the 3 out of 4, part of the 75% who are receiving government help. because now they have the comprehension skills needed to get to the next level. The other interesting thing here, and obviously my stats didn't show us this, but I'm gonna always come back to the family, because your family structure typically is going to determine the success of the kids. If your family structure is intact, generally speaking, the kids are going to fall in line and become successful at something. They may not be doctors, they may not be lawyers, but they'll become successful at something because of the family structure that they had. But when you lack a structure, it opens the door for anything to creep in. Most students that I see who fall beneath the cracks are students that come from a structure that didn't support education, didn't support the idea of how important comprehension, reading, and education was. So as we go and we begin to argue about what President Biden's about to do, what former President Trump is going to do, what presidential candidate Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is about to do, to me, if we're not having conversations about fixing literacy in the education system and really applying a program that's going to be tangible across the board to solve the problem of reading in this country, then we're not having real conversations. Because most people who can read, most people who are educated, most people who are not in poverty, most of the arguments that we have, those people who read well, who have great jobs, who don't live in poverty, they don't tend to be, what's the word I'm looking for, affected by the societal problems that we tend to argue about during elections. The solutions are simple. When are we going to really try and solve problems in this country and stop talking about the side problems? And on that note, I'm B. Period, and I'm out.